Australia is facing an alarming increase in hatred towards migrants, and the primary target are Indian migrants. On 31st of August, a massive rally called March for Australia occurred. The main reason for the rally is to protest against immigration. A lot of attendees proclaimed that the movement is not about racism, but it's about the failed policy of massive immigration at such a short time. And many migrants actually agree about this sentiment. However, when an Indian migrant took the stage on the rally, this is how they treat him.
They are not blending in our culture. They are not protecting our freedom. They are twisting it. Fuck this.
Now compare that treatment from when a neo-Nazi leader took the stage.
Standing on the steps of the Victorian Parliament, this neo-Nazi had his moment.
If we want to secure our Australia and not Parliament's Australia, then we have to stop immigration.
Thomas Sewell finished his speech without interruption.
What caused all this? Rising inflation, which turned an unaffordable cost of living crisis and housing crisis. Economists says that the housing crisis was caused by supply chain disruptions, bureaucracy on approvals, which caused a massive bottleneck on construction along with rising interest rates. But some government officials took this opportunity to blame the failed immigration policies. So, why the focus on Indians? On 2014, there were 397,000 Indian-born migrants. Fast forward to now, there's over 1 million Indian-born migrants here in Australia, which consists of 3.4% of the entire Australian population. One protester even showed that the Indian migrants who came in over the past 4 years is more than double than the Italian and Greek immigrants over the past 100 years. So with all this hate towards Indians, I've watched countless of videos and read multiple comments, which is borderline, if not entirely racist. So I'm going to share the real reasons on why Australians hate Indian migrants. One of the main reasons that I've seen is that people think that Indians are proud hypocrites, meaning they like to brag about India and how great the country is. However, they do not want to go back there. Some Indians even say that Indian migrants love to flaunt their Western lifestyle when they go back to India for a visit. However, the moment they come back here to Australia, they talk bad about Australia and say how India is a lot more better. Number 2 is they don't assimilate to Australian culture. They don't adhere to Australian values. They're completely rude. Like one of the examples that was given is they normally cut in line.
Say, don't try it. Don't try it. No. I don't care. Move. Current reservation over there. Move. You're not going in front. There's a line, mate. There's a line. Go back. Go back. I've got... Yeah, exact same. So move. Exact same. Move. About an essence. Doesn't matter. Move. You're not going in front of me.
Some of the bad things that I've read as well is that they are unclean, which is why there's a lot of cases where Indians are not able to rent apartments or houses due to these kinds of biases. They also only associate within their culture. Now, guys, the analogy that I will use here is that if my son brings over a friend and he's disrespectful into my house, and he only talks to my son and not to me and my wife, then you're gonna be 100% sure that I'm not gonna be happy with my son's friend, to the point wherein I might even kick him out of our house. Assimilating to the culture is really important, And this is one of the main things that I've done when I moved here in Australia. I made sure that I don't just hang around with Filipinos. When I started here, I tried to communicate and have social networks between the Australian locals. And migration is not just for anyone, because the truth is, for you to be a successful migrant, you actually need to assimilate within the culture, which means your background may be from a different country. However, the end goal is to be an actual citizen of the country that you moved into. People see a lot of Hindu temples lately and a bunch of Diwali festivals and other Indian heritage festivals, which is alarming for some people here in Australia who wants to protect their way of life. The next thing on the list is that they are bad employees. A lot of people think that Indian migrants are lazy, and if you've given them a management role, the issue is that they will practice nepotism, where they're only going to hire other Indians into the company. Another one that I've seen is that they've been called to abuse the system from time to time. This means that they're basically trying to get money from Centrelink. Some of the examples that was given is during the baby bonus era, wherein during 2004 to 2014, Australia was giving $3,000 to $5,000 bonus whenever you have a child. Now, during 2010 to 2014, the Indians who are born in Australia have significantly increased, which is why there's a negative sentiment back then that the population growth being attracted by this baby bonus aren't the desired demographic. Another one is that they don't speak English. I know that this does not apply to everyone because I actually have a lot of Indian friends who can speak properly and even without any sort of accent. However, these are one of the comments that I've seen, which is why it's a lot more difficult to connect with Indians since they only speak their own language. And this is quite frustrating for Australians because the sentiment is, if you move here to Australia, you need to make sure that you know how to speak in English. In fact, it's actually one of the things that they ask during your citizenship test. Now, the truth is, not all Australians hate migrants. In fact, these protesters are only a small portion of the population. And according to the police, there were just slightly over 50,000 people who attended the rally. And that is a huge number. Since I'm Asian and I love doing math, let's run the numbers. 50,000 people against 27 million in population. That means that the people that attended the rally is not even more than 0.5%, which means it's less than 0.5% of the population. What this means is that over 99.5% of the population do not agree with this sentiment. Because if people actually do agree, then there will be a lot more than 50,000 people in there. However, please, if you do get into this country, please assimilate to the culture instead of forcing Australians to adhere to your way of life. Because while this portion of this population is still small, it can drastically increase in no time. If you really want to know how all this hatred started, I've created a video on the impact of Australian government in the housing crisis for you to watch. And it's right here. And click this one right here. And as always, please subscribe to the channel so that we can continue making these kinds of videos.